blood, guts, flamethrowers, kamikazes, valor galore.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
What exactly was it like to be there, fighting the bloodiest battle in Marine Corps' history? The US didn't know what was waiting for them, and their enemy, the Japanese, had a plan to inflict as many casualties as possible to discourage foreign invaders from setting foot on their mainland. Even with air superiority and a huge numbers advantage, the US still needed a perfect performance and the invention of an unbreakable code inspired by the Navajo language to come out on top. Oh, and flamethrowers. Lots of flamethrowers. Today on Nutty History, we're dissecting all the nutty bits of the Marine Corps' bloodiest battle, Iwo Jima. Before we storm this beach, take a second and subscribe to this channel. Then hit that notification button. But that's not enough. Leave a comment and let us know what bloody battles, nutty knowledge, or hair-raising history you want to see us cover next. "27 Medals of Honor were awarded for action on Iwo Jima, more than any other battle in US history. The recipients ranged in ranks from private to lieutenant colonel. 14 received their awards posthumously. The battle lasted from February 19th until March 26th in 1945 during World War II. Approximately 70,000 US service members took part in the battle, which was over 3 times as many troops as the 22,000 Japan had defending the island. 70,000 versus 22,000.
I like those odds.
But don't understand the heart of the Japanese soldier. In 36 days of grueling, all-out war, nearly 7,000 US Marines were killed, and another 20,000 were wounded. Talk about the PTSD these men have to live with after this battle. On the Japanese side, only 216 men were captured and taken prisoner. The other 21,784 were killed in battle or never found. Now, how did Japan inflict that much damage on the highly trained United States Marine Corps while fighting down from 22,000 to only 216 men? Japan knew they had no shot of beating the US, so the battle plan at Iwo Jima was to inflict as many casualties as possible on the Americans to discourage them from invading the mainland. Through suicidal air kamikaze and ground banzai attacks, Japanese soldiers displayed undying willingness to serve their emperor. Iwo Jima proved this even further as thousands of soldiers fought to the death, but not before slaughtering a huge number of Marines. How did they do it? Japan had an intricate tunnel system that covered over 11 miles of the island. There were small bunkers called pillboxes built throughout the tunnels, each equipped with machine guns and heavy artillery. These bunkers made it easy for snipers to pick off US Marines as they cautiously walked through landmine-filled beaches. Marines are tougher than a $2 steak, but it helps to know what you're getting into. The US intel was completely surprised by the Japanese artillery, the tunnel system, and the condition of the beaches themselves.
It sucks. I hate it here.
Marines were shocked to find a stinky sulfur pit full of dangerous, quick-sinking sand, frustratingly impossible to roll equipment across, causing a huge traffic jam. Japanese soldiers nervously watched the tunnels as clumps of Marines built up on the beach. Finally, when the human traffic jam got to be large enough, Japan unleashed hell and mowed US troops down. The carnage began and the bloody battle was underway. Because the island was made of foul-smelling sulfur, there was no vegetation and nowhere to take cover. The troops, nauseated by the smell and surprised by the attack, had only their equipment and each other to guard against the initial wave of attack. Then, once Marines had their bearings on the blood-soaked beaches, they were totally caught off guard by Japan's interconnected bunkers. Marines would fight with blood, sweat, and tears to clear a bunker out and let their guard down as they walked past what they assumed to be an empty bunker. Then, they would be butchered by a new Japanese soldier. Discovering that all the bunkers were interconnected was a steep learning curve.
Crashing and exploding is all part of the learning curve.
To keep this bloodiest battle from becoming even bloodier, Marines turned to a special weapon. Not only was Iwo Jima the bloodiest battle in the United States Marine Corps' history, it was also the burniest. With nowhere to run or hide, desperate US troops had to meet Japanese troops head-on. US demolition experts strapped 70-pound flamethrowers on their backs and were forced to engage in battle at a terrifyingly close distance. Demo men would run toward the small pillboxes and fire into their open window, or get on top and fire into the ventilation pipes, toasting anything inside. These demo, fire-throwing bad boys had to get within 15 yards to toast the enemy. Many of the medals of honor given out for this battle were given to these fire-handling Marines that turned a bloody battlefield into burnt toast.
Oh, the toast is a little burnt.
Yep, just the way you like it.
In the first few days of battle, 40 brave Marines volunteered to march up Mount Suribachi as the entire Japanese army tried to use them for target practice. The small combat patrol overcame tremendous odds to fight back the surprised Japanese soldiers waiting on the higher ground and managed to secure the entire mountain for the US Marine Corps.
You can do it!
In spite of suffering massive losses in the opening days of the bloody battle, the Marines still achieved one of their objectives and took the mountain. The bloody, broken, but not beaten men raised a US flag to inspire the troops still pouring onto the beach from the sea. The men raising the flag atop Mount Suribachi is one of the most iconic photos of all time and inspired the Marine Corps' War Memorial in Arlington. During the war, Marine Corps leadership selected 29 Navajo men who created a code based on the complex, unwritten Navajo language. This system enabled the code talkers to translate 3 lines of English in 20 seconds, not 30 minutes as was common with existing code-breaking machines. This amazingly efficient code helped US forces to ultimately win the war and saved millions of lives that otherwise would have been lost. On Iwo Jima, the battle-bloodied Marines needed their Navajo brothers to be absolutely perfect, and the men came through. 6 Navajo Code Talker Marines successfully transmitted more than 800 messages without one single error. When a mistake costs countless lives, these Navajo Marines may have been the most important men on the battlefield. At the end of the war, the Navajo Code remained unbroken. After Iwo Jima fell, all that was left was the Battle of Okinawa. There, with its army ravaged and fleets depleted, Japan was forced to rely on suicidal kamikaze pilots to protect its mainland. Every day, Okinawa citizens, even 1,780 middle school boys aged 14 to 17 years, fought and died for Japan. After Okinawa, it became apparent to Allied forces that even though Japan was militarily defeated, they would not surrender unless severely pressured. So the United States employed the only atomic bombs ever to be used in battle, dropping nuclear weapons on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered 160 days after its defeat at Iwo Jima. The battle officially ended March 26, 1945. But there were about 3,000 Japanese troops that refused to surrender and were unaccounted for. So Marines spent the next few weeks in close quarters combat clearing those tunnels. After nearly 3 weeks of more bloodshed, US troops believed they had eliminated nearly all the Japanese forces. But there were still soldiers living in the tunnels. In fact, Yamakagi Kufuku and Matsudo Linsoki, 2 Imperial Japanese Navy machine gunners, wouldn't officially come out of hiding and surrender until January 6, 1949, 4 years after the war was over. You won't need to wait that long for the next Nutty video. Just hit that notification bell and subscribe. We'll let you know when it's ready. Thanks for watching.